Welcome to this video all about Paper 1 Section C of AQA's Aspects of Comedy module. The aim of this video is to show you what an example essay could look like. So I'm going to be working through the question and showing you an example response using the importance of being earnest and the comedy poems, the comedic anthology. This is of course for A-level, and with A-level the important thing is to always make sure that you answer the question. So don't go off on a tangent, because the more you go off on a tangent the less marks you will probably end up getting. Make sure you use the text selectively, so don't try and talk about everything. You can't talk about all 7 poems and you can't talk about the whole of Earnest either, so you're going to have to choose 1 or 2 poems and maybe 1 section of Earnest to talk about in relation to the task. You will have 2 tasks in the example clip. Obviously you just do 1 of them, and you have approximately 50 minutes to do it in this closed book format, so you won't get the text with you. I would also say to students that there's no need to compare the text together, and there's also no need to write a lengthy introduction and conclusion, because sometimes students will spend many minutes on that and they're not actually saying anything. Beware lengthy intros and conclusions. It's far better to get to the heart of the essay rather than dance around it with the intro and conclusion, I suppose. So the question that we're going to be looking at today in this video is the bottom task here. Obviously you will get 2 tasks like this. They'll be quite general because they will need to be answerable in relation to 8 texts, and of course you won't have studied all of them. So in this video we're going to be looking at the presentation of cunning and deceitful men, or male characters. I've already done the top question in a different video, so if you want to see the answer to that question then look back at my video catalogue and you'll find it. Just to bear in mind that I have already last year made videos for all of the comedic poems in the anthology, and for the essay that I'm going to show you today I'm referring just to the flea, and there's a video about that, video 20 in my channel, if you need to revise that poem. So hopefully it should be obvious why I've chosen that poem in relation to the question, because of the speaker. So the speaker of that poem could be seen as cunning and persuasive, etc., which is why that makes a good poem to use. And for Earnest, I'm going to be talking about Algy, Algernon Moncrief, and I'm going to be talking about his behaviour in Act 2 when he comes to the manor house dressed or in the process of bumburying, pretending to be Earnest. So those are the 2 parts of the texts that I'm going to be referring to in answer to this question. You can see my plan is terrifically short. That's because I know these texts really well. I don't have to write everything down I want to say, because it's in my long-term memory ready to use. So let's imagine that I'm a student, not a teacher, and I've thoroughly revised the text. I know the text well. That means I can spend less time planning because the information is ready for me to use in my brain. So I'm going to start with the Earnest section. So 1 paragraph about Earnest and 1 paragraph about the poem, and that's it. Again, no need to compare. You're not trying to put into multiple paragraphs, multiple texts. It's very blocky in that sense. We start with a relatively long introduction. This is definitely the longest introduction I've shown you, and definitely you wouldn't need it any longer than this as well. So again, beware long intros, because they're often not particularly useful in getting marks. So it says, whilst Comedy of Manners, Earnest, features the character of Algernon Moncrief, who is presented as a lovable rogue, capable of deception and cunning through his adoption of disguise of Earnest in Act 2 and his use of bumburying as a device to escape his obligations. Dunn's the Flea also proves that humour is created from men, as a persuasive and audacious speaker engages in a metaphysical conceit in order to have premarital sex with his mistress. So that intro basically just notifies the examiner what you're going to be talking about, because they don't know what text you've studied. So that helps them know, oh, okay, you're going to be talking about these 2 texts. So we have now a paragraph all about Act 2 of Earnest, where Algy comes in the process of bumburying. So Wilde's play, The Importance of Being Earnest, features Algy, who has invented an invalid friend, Bunbury, so he can escape the dogmatic and serious obligations to live a life of pleasure. The verb bumbrying therefore means to travel to a place under a guise of someone other than yourself. This is what Algy does in Act 2 when he visits Jack's country manor in order to pursue Cecily. The audience is already aware about Algy's capability for deception from Act 1 when we are introduced to the concept of bumbrying, and now we see it in action. Algy arrives and convinces Cecily that he is Earnest. When Jack arrives, he is unaware that Algy has already tricked Cecily, Miss Prism and Chasuble, and engages in a farcical and elaborate set of lies, saying that Earnest has died of a severe chill in Paris, which is why he is wearing black in order to give the impression of seriousness. But as audiences know, this is a hollow display of mourning, as no one has actually died. When Cecily comes back on stage, she trivialises Jack's situation by saying he looks like he has toothache, and then reveals that Ernest is on the porch eating muffins. Jack then comes face to face with his fictional creation as Algy has become Ernest, and the pair are forced to reconcile and shake each other's hand in a shallow and hollow display of forgiveness. Jack, however, is deeply resentful of Algy's behaviour, calling him a scoundrel because he has scuppered and undermined Jack's whole scheme. Despite Jack's annoyance, the situations that both men get themselves into provides a principal source of comedy in the play. It is also worth noting that Jack is equally as deceptive as Algy. Whereas Algy has bumbrying, Jack has invented a brother Earnest, who gets into dreadful scrapes. So both men are cunning and duplicitous as each other. This allows Wilde to satirise Victorian society as being hypocritical, happy to give the impression of seriousness while hiding the fact they are doing everything possible to escape it. And that's all they say about Earnest. Now, potentially, they could have said a little bit more, perhaps, about what goes on in Act 2, but this meets the criteria for a good essay in an A-level. So, and remember, of course, Earnest is only half the essay, so it's, I think, okay to move on, even if you are aware of other things happening at that moment. Finally then, we've got to now make sure we hit the requirements of this question, which means we have to talk about another text. That other text is the Anthology, in which the flea is located. So this paragraph is all about now using the flea to again answer the task. In the flea, the common insect is cunningly and opportunistically used by the male speaker to indulge in a theatrical argument where he is trying to persuade his mistress to engage in premarital sex. The speaker is a young intellectual, which is significant because it allows him to show sharpness of mind and tenacity in conducting his argument, as well as being able to quickly adapt to the actions of the mistress. Significantly, the male speaker has the wit to choose a flea in the first place. Not only is it a mundane and trivial insect, suggesting the speaker thinks his bawdy requests are equally as small, it also suggests that the speaker has thought through the flea's ability to suck blood, which he likens to sexual intercourse. For example, when the speaker proclaims two bloods mingled be, he is not only talking about the flea's capability to suck blood from multiple people, but also alluding euphemistically to how sex brings about a sense of togetherness and unity. The mixing of the blood is likened to sex in this metaphysical sense. As a result, the flea becomes a metaphysical conceit for the speaker's quest to find sexual unity with the woman, which is reinforced in the second stanza with the repetition of marriage, suggesting the flea represents their togetherness in his mind. When the mistress kills the flea at the start of the third stanza, which goes against his desire to keep the flea alive, he quickly adapts and changes his argument, saying that killing the flea hasn't harmed her reputation, so having sex with him wouldn't either. Within the private space of this poem, the speaker invites the mistress to reject any religious damnation from loss of maidenhead, which is the maiden's virginity. So a simple insect becomes a way for the cunning speaker to present issues to do with religious morality and how the mistress should dismiss her concerns in favour of having sex with him. This is a man determined to get what he wants. As a result, now the conclusion, as a result, the cunning behaviour of my male characters often provides a main source of comedy. I think that's supposed to say many male characters. There we go, just changed it. As a result, the cunning behaviour shown by many male characters often provides a main source of comedy. And that sentence is your conclusion. You don't want to, in effect, write the essay again as a conclusion, because the examiner is saying, yeah, we know. So don't repeat yourself. That's the risk with a conclusion. One sentence is fine. Again, it's fine without one, even. So don't spend time on things of little benefit, I suppose is what I'm trying to say. And that again is another essay. Now you could use a second poem if you wanted to, or you could, if you wanted to, refer to another bit of Earnest if you want. But this essay, despite only referring to one bit of Earnest and one bit of poetry, still meets the requirement of the question, and you haven't then done it wrong. You have talked about 2 texts as you were told to do, so you don't always have to do 2 bits of the same text or 2 poems, for example. So 1 poem is fine. So that is another example of a Paper 1 Section C answer, aspects of comedy using Earnest and the AQA Comedy Anthology. Thank you very much for watching, and good luck.